Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to Inspire, Innovate, and Ignite Conversations That Count on our wonderful Sacred You platform. Tonight, I'm Heidi, and I'll be your host tonight. And I'm really excited. We'll be talking about how to tap into the fluid motion of your body, which is a subject that is so dear to my heart and I've studied for over 40 years. And basically, we have all been taught that exercise, stretching, maybe some cardio, all of those things are how we're supposed to move. And these are all great. However, there's a missing element. And that's the fluid movement of the body. Just as a side note here, molecularly, we are 95% water. All of our systems, everything around our body is either bathed in water, is water, and we'll talk more about that. And we need to spend more time allowing our body to move freely away from pattern and structure, because there is that natural fluidity that occurs and opens us up to greater creativity and resilience. So I'm so excited to have this wonderful panel with me to discuss this and questions, and I think we'll just have so much fun. What I'd like to do is have each of the ladies introduce themselves, tell you just briefly a little bit about them, and then they all will have wonderful offers, and we'll talk about that more at the end. So, Soulara, if you would like to go first, that would be great.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here this evening. I am Soulara Sevier, Reiki Master Teacher and Oracle. I'm the founder of Soul Reiki, Health, Beauty, and Wellness. And I'm a firm believer that we are spiritual beings having this amazing physical experience. And we need to bridge the gap between the two to have more of a fluid life. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks. Bex, do you want to go next?
I would love to go next, thank you. And I'm joining you from Sydney today. And I'm Bex Smith, the cheerleader for change. And so I really help people find their inner cheerleader and help them move through their emotions. And I use nature as a beautiful mirror to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. And Adele.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adela and I'm in Melbourne. And I would like to talk about my background. So it's a mixture of everything. It is a beauty, it's a fashion design, and also I am former dancer. So I would like to talk to you about the perspective from a dancer and the movement.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm Heidi Henyon, the host, and I have been studying movement as a somatic practitioner and working with clients for over 40 years. And I first really started looking at this when I started studying with a woman named Emily Conrad. And she developed a process called continuum movement. And continuum movement is when we learn to tap into the fluidness of our body, the inner intelligence that exists within each of us. And we allow our body to inform us on how we want to move, how it wants to move, rather than us telling it how to move. And structure is very important. In order to walk down the street, your body has to have the structure of lifting the legs and moving the arms and propelling us forward. So there is an importance to structure. However, we know in the health industry and through science now that when our body gets too structured, our nervous system gets very rigid. And we're not being able to be flexible and resilient and creative as easily. Additionally, we know that there's this incredible intelligence that is in the fluids in our body and in water. If you look at quantum computers now, the quantum computers are actually based on highly, highly purified water. And what they're finding out is when they start processing information through this water is pulling in far more information that would ever be in the memory banks of that computer. And so what we're learning about now is the fluid in our bodies actually is tapped into that greater intelligence than even us. And so I really wanted to bring this conversation up of how do you tap into that fluidity so we can move out of structure. Our bodies are much healthier. That's the other part of this, with any type of ability to move freely and easily within our body rather than structured. I mean, think about it. If you're all stiff and tight, which we all do, you know, after I've spent 4 hours in front of the computer typing and trying to figure out what to put up on social media, my shoulders are like, yeah. And I get to a point where I can't really think as clearly as I normally would. And I'm kind of walking and I'm very stiff and not creative. But as soon as I start tapping into and saying, okay, body, what do you need now? And allowing that more fluidity that you might get in ecstatic dance from Continuum and from other things, all of a sudden I'm clearer again. And so that's kind of how I define fluid motion in the body and the fluidity of the body and tapping into that. So I have a number of questions, and we're going to I will, go around and choose people. The first question I'd like you to answer is, how do you define or think of fluid motion, and what made you curious about it? And I'd love to start with Adele.
What a great question, Heidi. So how I see the fluidity and the fluid motion in the body, it's a state of a flow. We like to describe it as a flow, and I see it's this natural state of non-resistance. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say that we are all about like all resistance, like I created it and it's bad. No, actually it's not bad. So I don't think of that as the bad. It's leading us to level up. So it is a great sign and great tool to actually use. So when I say resistance, I just want to make it clear that it's nothing bad. And also how I perceive this flow state, it has to do with the relationship I have to myself, how kind I am to myself, how loving I am towards to myself. And as your love to yourself raise, then the fluidity and the heart and all of the energy open, and then things get more easier and more fluid, more moving. And also what I want to say, I see it has to do with the feminine energy. I already talk about the openness, the receiving, and more feminine energy is coming and flowing through us, more the body opens up and more fluid it is. So this is how I perceive.
Nice. Thank you so much. And I love that you brought in the feminine aspect of that, because very often the masculine structure, because our society is very masculine now, we're very much structured, forming. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that as a society, we're moving towards that more fluid ability to be. And additionally, when we are in that feminine space, we can have our emotions and things come up and flow through this fluidity rather than getting solidified within our body. So thanks for bringing that aspect up. I really appreciate it. Soulara, how about you? How do you define or think of the fluid motion, and what made you curious about it?
I love the question. I love what Adela said. For me, it's about fluid being flow and rhythm. So everything that is living has a rhythm. My mother used to call it a biorhythm. There's highs, there's lows, there's peaks, there's valleys. And that is also synonymous with frequency. All living things have a frequency, so things are moving. Even our atoms inside of our body are not just sitting still. In order for us to see through the light spectrum, like this table I'm sitting in front of, or even the computer that I'm looking at, the atoms have to move and vibrate. So for me, it's flow, it's rhythm. Tapping into these rhythms of various things really is a way to align with that. And say, for instance, we desire to manifest something. What I learned to do as a young child is to use my mind, use visualization to sort of tap into that frequency or that rhythm, that flow. And it sort of aligns with the energy that's already in our bodies, and we are given like action steps, whether it's through like a dream or through just sort of that intuitive nature of the things that we need to do to manifest whatever that is that we desire. So it's all about connecting, aligning, flow, rhythm. When we can learn to sort of tune out, because I know a lot of times we're taught that, oh, there's a difference in this, whether it be ethnicity or whether it be religion and things of that nature. Those kinds of things sort of pull us apart, and we tend to forget how connected we are through rhythm, through flow. And I believe that once we can just sort of stay in that awareness as often as possible, we can then unite with that universal flow, begin to see how much we have in common, how much we can flow together, and really just elevate the vibration of the planet.
Nice. Thank you. Yes, there is that the one of the things and bringing in when you talk about that unity and the rhythm and the flow between all of us and things, there is a unifying field that is constantly flowing. And they're now discovering that a lot of that actually moves through the water in our body. That is the connection into it. So it's really fascinating to see what science is showing about that. So thanks so much. Bex, to you, how do you define or think of fluid motion, and what made you curious about it?
Thank you. And it really resonates everything that Heidi and Adela and yourself, Soulara, Adela and yourself, Heidi, have said before, because as a body psychotherapist, I'm really about the body also holding our emotions. So I work with emotions a lot. And for me, the flow is actually finding the flow with your emotions, because your emotions are energy in motion. And so when we stop that energy in motion and have that suppressed or resistant, like you said, Adela, energy, then that can actually cause problems within our body, and we're not in flow with our own body. I also resonated with the feminine aspect, Adela, because I have a methodology that's called the art of yin. And that's actually bringing the flow in your body by using nature as the mirror. And that's not just limited to females, but it's also balancing that masculine and feminine, but coming from the receiving aspect of the feminine. So the art of yin is all about how you can find your natural rhythm and use nature as the mirror. So we look to seasons. So seasons are part of nature's natural rhythm. We have seasons for reasons as well. And we need to look at what our natural rhythm is to be able to identify then our emotional state, which then will also help us keep in our personal flow. So one of my important pieces that I work with people is how you express or suppress your energy. And I'm sure we'll talk about tools and tips later, which I'll talk to when we get to that bit, I think. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you so much. True. Yeah. And back to the rhythms, we have natural rhythms and flows to our body, and we have our body itself is in constant motion, constant movement. And when you actually get down into like the cellular level, there's structure in the cell itself, but there's not necessarily structure in the processes that are happening. And so it's very interesting. And again, bringing in that feminine aspect to learning how our bodies naturally the natural fluidity of movement and the grace that we have that. And the second part of the question was, what made you curious about the flow and the fluidity of the body? And I'd like to have your comments on that, because I think curiosity is such an important way to access the world and access information. And so, Soulara, what made you curious about the flow and the fluidity of the body?
What I love most about life is action. You know, in this realm, we have to move to make things happen, whether it be visualization or whether it be physical action steps that we actually take, to do certain things. And so it's really a passion of mine to understand and understand the importance of the roles that we play in being sort of the pilot of our life, right? Like there's things we have to do. And so that's movement, that's motion. And I think it was Adela who said earlier about getting in the flow. And so a lot of times I see in my clients that, there's a tendency to look outside of ourselves for an answer as to why certain things are looking a certain way in our environment. And I always redirect them to go inward. Did they miss a sign of a step that they were supposed to take, or maybe, some energy blockages that were not released? We always have to go inside for the information. And I love, Heidi, how you mentioned that, we are a majority water. So it just makes sense that that information is available. It's there. We just have to tune in and tap into it. So it's really part of what I do as a Reiki master teacher, movement energy flow. I actually created a method that I call Soul Reiki Flow, because instead of hovering over the energy centers, I lift the energy just like that. Energy is ether. It's light. And all we have to do is hold that intention. And if I align with my client, we can lift that together. So it really is sort of the hallmark of my business. So I thought it was very exciting to talk about it and share tips and tools.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I always refer to that as the innate intelligence of our body. Our bodies know exactly what we need in every single moment. They are our absolute best friend. And if we can learn to tap into that within our own being. And for me, that intelligence sits in the fluids of our body. And it sits in the ability for us to flow and move with that and listen, so we know what's coming next. Because our body, there's been experiments that show our bodies know a split second at least before our mind exactly what's going to happen and exactly what we need to do. So that's so important. So Adele, what made you curious about the fluid motion of the body and the body?
So in my early stage as a dancer, I was very curious about why someone's like a genius dancer and why I'm not, because I wasn't natural. And I tried to, force it hard. But the time when it really came to me, it was the moment when I was working on my spirituality, of course, and cleansing all the things. But then there will be this moment of surrender when you kind of give in and you're able to relax in your body. And that was the moment after, I don't know, maybe 2 decades when I was really, in the competitions and forcing being dancer. Then I would feel this like, you give in, you surrender, and you're able to really like move it and move the energy. And then the light language would come in and I'll be able to literally move the energy, and then magic would just happen. So it is very interesting. And it's interesting how it is great to reflection of what's going on inside. If you look at yourself or someone, how they're moving, so you learn everything about them through that. So this is what I'm the most curious about.
Yes, thank you so much. And I love that you bring in the magic that happens, because I know in my own personal experience and the experience of my clients, when they finally do tap into that innate intelligence and take that moment, because I'm talking from a very physical perspective and working, when they actually all of a sudden realize that the body is moving them in this beautiful dance, rather than arm up, arm down, do this, hold this pose, whatever. But all of a sudden, and I've even seen some of my clients now in their yoga practice, all of a sudden that you can actually see ripples in their body of fluid motion. So even though they're holding sort of a static pose, this magic happens where the fluids of the body actually start moving. And in those moments, they'll talk about how, wow, this emotion came up and it just passed through, or I had the memory of something traumatic that happened and it came up and it left. And their bodies are the fluid in the motion, the fluids in the body are very, very active. And that's also so nurturing to the body. Bex, what made you curious about the body, especially being with what you do?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think as a teenager, I just noticed emotions, like people having, and myself included, having, emotional reactions that were to things that were maybe out of scale at times, especially being a teenager. And so for me, I became curious as to why do I react in such different ways sometimes, and how does my energy or emotion come out? So I really sort of tapped into that early on, and then I was lucky enough to find a mentor and teacher that sort of guided me to body psychotherapy, which of course is the characterology of the body. And so, as you said, we do present in our bodies in a certain way, in which we can actually sometimes see as practitioners, where people might be holding or a certain characterology or something emotional that happened to them at one of those formulative developmental stages. So I became very curious as to, wow, we can actually help people by sort of identifying and seeing what's showing up in their body and how I can help them move through that themselves. And like Soulara, it's not about me doing anything. It's about supporting the individual and the energy of the individual to really create that space for themselves and move that energy and motion through their body. So yeah, I became very curious then. And I also had a personal accident. So I actually found myself not being able to walk for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and just really finding my flow in my body when there was no movement. So there was no physical movement, as in walking, that I could do. And so just my connection to myself and my body became really important to keep my energy flowing down to my legs and through my body. And so that was a really important practice for me, and also something that I share with others as well too.
Nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the body is just so fascinating and amazing when you think of all the things that are going on all the time that we're not even conscious of. And they now know that systems in the body can work independent of other systems, and they don't necessarily have to have what we used to always think was it had to have direction from the brain. And what science is discovering now and research is showing is actually you can cut off that connection from the nervous system to certain areas of the body, and they will still function independently just as they did. So we're really learning that we've got all this amazing intelligence in here. And yeah, I became curious in my teens when I first started studying with a yoga master about just the inner workings of this magnificent, and at that time, everybody referred to it as a magnificent machine. And we now know this really is not just a machine because of that built-in intelligence. So that kind of dates me. I realized recently I started studying yoga literally 50 years ago. And it's like, oh my God, I can't be that old, but that's a whole nother panel. How do we deal with getting old? So thank you all for sharing that. It's just amazing. So how do you personally tap into that innate intelligence and that fluidity and that creativity and that openness of the body? And let's go ahead and start with you, Bex.
Thanks, Heidi. As I said about the express or suppress piece before, so I start by checking in with, am I expressing myself or suppressing myself? So I do a bit of self-reflection and think about that from an emotional state, but then I also tap into my body. So I do a thinking exercise and then I do a feeling exercise. So I think about how I've been expressing or suppressing myself in situations, and I write that down, and then I let my body help me and tell me also where I've been doing that. So I just take a moment to sit quietly and do that reflection and just check in with parts of my body and just really tap into the wisdom, like we said before, of what's happening. but acknowledge it. So I might have a little creak or a little something, or a pain, and I just go to that part of my body and I just sit with it and I just ask it, what do you need right now? And generally through that conversation, and sometimes it's a slow conversation, it can take a little while to get there, but generally through that I can track and look at sensations in my body where I might have suppressed some emotion or suppressed something from the week or the day, and it just allows me to have a conversation with it and then to release it, just to let it go. And it might take a few conversations, but it's just about that being in communication and then feeling the energy flow and release from that area as well. So I'd get little sensations. So just the tiniest of sensations can be a message sometimes.
Great. Thank you so much. And yes, that's so true. When we learn to tap in, our bodies will tell us it doesn't have to be, hopefully it doesn't have to be what I call the body giving me the cosmic 2x4 to start paying attention. If we start paying attention early, our body will let us know exactly what's going on, what needs. It will even, if you even can learn to tap in around food and eating, the body will tell you what it wants. Once you're clean from a lot of the processed foods and things like that, so that the body has a real sense of what's natural to it, not normal to it. A lot of times we say normal, but normal is what we've decided is normal. It's not necessarily what's natural to the body. And so for me, when you're tapping into that fluid motion, you're tapping into what's natural for the body rather than what we've kind of decided it should be. So thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Soulara, how about you? How do you personally tap into the fluidity?
Thank you for that wonderful question. And I really enjoy what I've heard so far, especially Heidi, when you mentioned what is normal versus natural for the body. That was a very important key factor. To add to that, being an empath, and I found this out later in life, which posed several challenges along my growth and development. However, I learned that I just absorb emotions, energy from everybody, from everything, the environment, animals, even food. Didn't realize that until much later in life. And so I learned the importance of energy clearing. And of course, in the beginning, I didn't know anything about Reiki. I just knew that I was drained. I just knew that I just really could only function at work, come home, and just go to sleep. Like, it was just so much within my body that was encapsulated in this water that I just could not release, didn't know what it was, and didn't know how to release it. And so throughout my spiritual journey, I found out about Reiki and what it takes to every day start my life anew. Just start over, just release. And actually, I have to do that now in the evenings as well, because again, I'm pulling in so much from the environment. But with Reiki that I do on a daily basis, I've learned to just, as I mentioned earlier, just lift any blockages that I might have picked up along the way. If I know, and I can plan ahead as well, if I know that I'm going to an event where it's outside and there's a lot of people, I have to just be aware of that, make sure that I've had enough rest, make sure that I have enough water, because it's also important to balance the water that's in our bodies. Making sure that per our own physical needs, we also have the balance that we're taking in of the water to make sure everything is flowing smoothly. And so along with Reiki, I do physical exercises as well. I found out that it is just very important for our joints. We hear the term, if you don't use it, you lose it. So some people just sort of develop contractures just from not actually, for instance, taking their hands and fingers and spreading them out wide and back and doing everything like that, moving shoulders up and down. So I've learned to just incorporate movement. I practice Qigong as well, especially on Tuesdays. I kind of align my business with the galaxy. So I know that Tuesdays are associated with Mars, and Mars is dealing with action. So I like to do movement on Tuesdays. And so today, for instance, I did a movement to help release, dealing with the moon phase that we're in now. We're in the waning phase. So it's like, okay, how do we go ahead and release that extra energy that we picked up and haven't quite gotten rid of all the way? So basically for me, it's Reiki, which is just clearing the blockages, but also physical exercises for those muscles and tendons and joints, helping to integrate both my energetic and my physical body.
Mhm. Great. Thank you so much. I like when you're talking about the integration of the physical and the energetic and that sort of thing. It's so important to do that, and that allows us to not have quite as much structure, and structure tends to make us much more rigid. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And Adele, how about you? How do you personally tap into this fluidity?
So I was talking about the resistance earlier, and in terms of releasing things, well, it's been quite a journey for me, trying really different techniques and different things, and everything worked. But as you kind of leveling up, then new things start to occur. So for me, at the moment, it might change. It changed for sure. But what works for me, because I got really over of the techniques and everything, I just fully invited in whatever is there. And I know it will eventually pop. So this is how I work with it. It's like, yeah, I'm strong enough, just come in and whatever, really, I believe that it's just going to be fine. But I'm not like, pushing it away or putting too much attention to it or anything like that, because I'm just so over. So I feel a little bit bold, by saying that, but this is something that works for me. And taking breath and being in a moment, taking breaks, because I know we're all busy, and it's really important to really, stop for a moment as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I love that you talk about taking a break and breath. I know with for myself, when I go to tap into the fluidity of the body, I am using breath and sound and curiosity and inquiry, inquiring into, well, this part of my body's feeling a little stiff now. What does it need? Does it need to, stretch and get longer? Does it need to come in and get quieter? Is it smaller movements that my body might need right now to get into it, or is it larger movements? And in that process, I find that the things that create resistance in my body start to naturally move out. So I really do physically tune into what's going on in the body and the movement of it, so that structure that I've had, particularly all day sitting doing something, or if I've been dealing with clients that have had in my coaching practice that have had a lot of trauma, and you'll find that their bodies are kind of rigid. Well, let's make a sound, because that's the other thing that we know, is that sound creates waves within the fluid. And by creating that sound, we naturally start energizing the fluids in our body, and our bodies get to move more, which is again, coming out of that structure, being able to tap into that innate intelligence that many of you have spoken about, and all those things in the body. So we've talked a little bit about how you access the fluid motion of their body. I'd love for each of you to go around and give a couple tips, 1 or 2 tips that for our listeners, so that they can experience what you consider the fluid motion of the body, moving through resistance, moving through emotion, whatever that may be. And I'd like to start with Soulara, please. That would be great. So 1 or 2 tips that you can give to our listeners that they can put into practice now to help them.
Thank you, Heidi. So I'm going to talk about physicality and then spirituality, because again, that's my passion, to bridge the gap between the two, so that we can have this balanced, if you will, fluid life. So, we talked earlier about awareness, and it's very important to know where we sit on that continuum. Do we feel that there's blockages, or there's not as much motion or movement or flow on the inside of us? We have to, tune in, tap in to evaluate that. And after doing so, we can do some, from a physical standpoint, some simple things such as, how much water have I had today? Do I need to increase that water? Working towards exercise, like, do I just need to maybe stand up and take a little bit of a walk? Do I need to stretch or bend? Or, is that going to sort of produce more of that fluid motion inside of my body? We talked about the seasons earlier. Thank you so much for doing that, Bex. And it's important to know that there are certain vegetables and fruits that are in season that have water attached to them. So being able to become natural in absorbing, the nutrients of those fruits and vegetables, and how does that make us feel? Heidi, you mentioned, natural versus what's normal. And if we're more natural with it, maybe instead of, a sugary drink, I have an apple, or I have a handful of strawberries, depending on the season. So that's sort of the physical aspect of it. But then we move into the spiritual aspect of it. And of course, I have to talk about Reiki, because it's so important to remove what is wanting to lift. Sometimes we try to fight against ourselves and try to move something that wants to maybe give us some more information, or needs to kind of sit for a moment. And so we don't force energy to move. We lift it. We allow that which is ready to be lifted, so that we can transform that energy. We can transmute that into something that's beneficial for us. Keeping a positive outlook is also very important, to know that what we see as our reality is very changeable. In fact, it's really, it's less than 1% of what we see is the true reality. The other 99.999% is what we don't see. It is brought into reality by our minds. So just keeping that positive outlook helps us to keep hopeful and optimistic, and therefore there's possibilities. And so we do feel like, hey, I'm not stuck here. I am able to move and change what I am experiencing. Pay attention to the move phase. I talked about how I love to work with different planetary alignments, and it's just important to know, if it's a full moon, what does that mean for our emotions? What does it mean for the waters in our bodies? Because the moon also impacts the oceans. So the oceans and our water are very similar in nature as far as the salt and oxygen content that is present. So if the moon has that much of an impact on the ocean waves, then it has just as much of an impact on our own water. So what do we need to do with that? If it's a new moon, what are we doing with that? How are we feeling? Are we starting new projects? Are we tuning in, tapping in to see if we can take something that we've learned or that we released that isn't serving us? How can we then take that information and use it going forward? And then the last thing I'll mention is meditation. Just going within, sitting still. It doesn't have to be for, an extreme amount of time. It could just be for what you need at that moment. Maybe you just need to sit for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and just kind of breathe into it. Just take that assessment, evaluate what you need, what the plan is going to be for the day or for the following day. But it's just a matter of getting in tune with this wonderful, beautiful universe that we all have, that is all connected.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. And I like that you brought in the moon cycles and the nature and how the moon affects the fluidity in our bodies. And just by tracking that and tracking those cycles, and tracking the cycles of food according to the season that we're in and what's natural and growing around us. We live in a wonderful world. We're in the middle of the winter, and, right outside of Washington, D.C. in the U.S., I can get a pineapple. However, pineapples don't even grow naturally here in the summer. So, there's this old adage, everything we need is within a 20-mile radius of where you live. And so it's tuning into that natural ability and the natural cycles. Thank you so much for that. How about you, Adele? What tips can you give, or processes or whatever, a couple of them that our listeners can use to experience the fluid motion of their own body and their own being?
So I would like to take advantage of my fashion background and talk a little bit about clothing and what we wear. So first, it would be observing dress less. how I feel with my body, how I feel in my body, and how I feel just being, not wearing anything. So just observing and just, taking time. Could involve mirror if you wish. And then just observing how I feel with certain clothing I'm wearing. And by the time selecting into my wardrobe what makes me feel the greatest, what makes me feel more free, what makes me feel, my best self. So really taking time and, just observing and really playing with that. You can get really playful, and I feel it gets you to connect with the feminine energy as well, because this kind of, creativity and self-care and all of those things could be fun. Of course, for those who are this type of person. I know. I do my dress ups just for cheering myself. So it's one of the best things I can do for myself. There was another one I wanted to talk about. It's gone, so I'll need to come up with something else.
Or we can go to Bex.
Oh yes, we could talk about touch.
Okay.
We could talk about touch and observing how does it feel to touch myself and love myself through the, touch through the skin. And this is great tool to learning to love yourself as you are in your body. And as you soften with this, as you start to love yourself, then I believe it's just gonna surrender. It's just gonna, it's just gonna loosen up. It will.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Yes, touch is so important. Whether it's, we need touch from other people. We also need to be able to be comfortable touching ourselves. Again, we have this amazing body. It is ours, from the moment of conception till our very last breath. It is with us continually. And even if you've had severe trauma, you've had things like that, learning to simply touch, caress, hug yourself. Stimulate your skin so you don't feel so alone. Start to feel that motion inside. That's you. Thank you very much for bringing that up. That's a very important piece of and as anybody's knows from any of the panels they've seen me either run or beyond, my big thing is now we need to become our own best friends. And one of the most wonderful places to start is to tap in to that innate intelligence in our body. So Bex, what 2 things or however many processes or tips do you have for our listeners so that they can tap into that fluidity and that innate intelligence that exists within them?
Well, I think between Adela and Soulara pretty much said everything that I've been thinking of from an everyday perspective. So I'd love to just talk about something specific. So perhaps when conflict arises. So if you're feeling conflict in your life or even in your body, how is that showing up? So these sensations can be felt within different parts of our body and are unique to us as individuals. So you might not get the same conflict response as somebody else. It's going to be very unique to you. So, for example, a fight response might be felt in your hands as you're more prone to pushing away the threat. And maybe someone's freeze response could be felt in the feet as they're glued to the spot. So just really looking at the conflict responses, I guess, when you've got some conflict that's happening either from an external or an internal influence, and what is it happening to you? Do you have a fight response, which is, maybe an anger outburst or bullying, controlling or explosive behavior? And I always think of that as fire. So I use the elements to represent those aspects of self. So do you feel like you've got fire burning in your belly somewhere or burning? The flight response, are you overthinking? Do you maybe have some anxiety? Do you have difficulty sitting still? Are you really trying to become a perfectionist? And where in your body are you feeling that? Like, do you feel like you're not here anymore? You just go, oh, I spaced out for a minute. or two. So that's a really good indication that you just, you flight when you get a conflict. The freeze, you might have difficulty making decisions. You feel stuck. You might have some disassociation or numbness in your body, and that might actually show you that you're freezing that part of yourself out, or that decision that's attached to that part of your body. And then the other aspect is fawn, which I'm not sure if many people know that there's the fourth aspect of the fight, flight, or freeze, and that's fawn. And that's about being sort of a people pleaser, feeling like you've got a lack of identity. That also comes with the overwhelm, or the codependency feelings or emotions. So that may actually just be like, oh, I just give up and I'll just let somebody else do it. And so you feel like you've got no energy in your body, or you're feeling like you're overwhelmed with too much energy in your body as well. So that's just an idea of how you can really look at one aspect, which might be conflict, the emotion of conflict in your life.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing up the fawn. Many people don't know about, we all know about fight, flight, freeze. Another way that I've learned that too is fight, flight, freeze, and appease, because we go into that appeasing, and if you're in an environment that doesn't feel safe and other things aren't working, or you can't run out, sometimes giving in and appeasing the person is less detrimental than if you did fight or try to run and stuff. So it's a very interesting subject now, looking at the sympathetic nervous system and and the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic, and how it's working and how it functions in the world. So thank you for that so much. What I'd like to do before we get to the final question is I'd love for each of you to tell us how our wonderful audience can reach you, if you have any offers, and anything else about the practice and how you work with people, what you actually do. So, and if we can, I'd love to start with Soulara, please.
Wonderful, thank you. So, see if I can remember everything. I'll talk about my practice and how I work with people first. So I am a Reiki master teacher and an oracle. And so as far as the Reiki master teacher goes, I also, in addition to doing Reiki and performing that with my clients, I also teach it. So if someone is interested in learning their own energy clearing methods and learning how to protect themselves and to get in tune with their bodies and really tap into the power that is on the inside of themselves, I can help do that with traditional Reiki levels 1 and 2. And if someone is so inclined, a Reiki master level as well. And being an oracle, I use my intuitive gifts to assist my clients. For example, as I'm tuning in and tapping into their chakras, I get downloads of information. And so those serve as practical steps to help them day to day. For example, if a client is maybe having a challenge with a career, for example, or wanting to transition, if I'm working with their root chakra or their sacral chakra, there's information that comes through on their unique gifting and what they may want to consider as something to pursue, maybe alongside of what they're currently doing, and then at some point, hopefully maybe branching into that if it resonates with them. So I give all sorts of practical tips after the session once we have the energy clearing portion. I work a lot with crystals, so sometimes during the sessions I have crystals. I do in-person as well as online sessions. And then I have events, which brings me to my event for the end of this month. I will be hosting an in-person event in Metro Atlanta in the US on September 30th. And as I talked a little bit earlier, I like to bridge that gap between the physical and the spiritual. And so with our physical bodies, nutrition is so important. And so I've added a piece to my business that really brings in that holistic component. And so there is technology now that can measure a biomarker for wellness, which is our carotenoid level. And so I'll be co-hosting I call it Scan and Sip event. And so those who come will get their scan to figure out what their score is, to check and see how healthy they are on the inside, as well as get a free smoothie and network and just get connected with a community of like-minded people who want to just bridge that gap of the holistic wellness and physical and spiritual, and connect with one another. There was something else, Heidi. Oh, how to connect with me. So I can be found online at Soul Reiki Health Beauty Wellness. And whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, Soul Reiki Health Beauty Wellness.
Great. Thank you so very much, Soulara, for sharing that with us. And it sounds like a lovely event at the end of the month. Adele, how about you? Tell us a little more about you, what you do, how you work with clients, and if you have anything special for our guests listening.
So I'm currently not having any offers. I'm in transition to go back to my fashion design, which is very exciting. So my lingerie, handmade lingerie, that's something I love to do. It calls La Décadente. And if someone wants to get in touch with me on Facebook as Adela Healer, I'm also in Instagram. So everyone is welcome to say hi. And yeah, that's it.
Very exciting, transitioning and launching. That's always, I just did that. I just pivoted. That word is like so crazy. It's so overused now, but yes, I do understand when you're in the process of that changing. So that's so exciting. And by the way, all of the information to get a hold of the ladies as well as myself will be in the chat and the comments below when you are watching this video. So thank you. And Bex, how about you?
You can get in contact with me at bexsmith.com.au because I'm in Australia, so don't forget the .au. And I also have a beautiful community, an online community called Yintopia, which is the utopia for your emotions, where you can come and fill your cup, find your flow, and release the overflow. So all about that watery element as well of emotions. So that's on Facebook, Yintopia, with Bex Smith. And you can jump on my website because I also have a beautiful flow report, which is really looking at the practical aspects of life and overlaying the elements with that. So I mentioned before that I work with elements. So the methodology that I use is all about the thinking, which is the air element, the planning, which is the earth, the feeling, which is the water, and the doing, which is the fire. So in the report, we discuss what might be your passion point, which is where you really thrive and start your beautiful flow process from, and then where your pain point might be, so where you might get stuck. So I love in the air element, so that thinking and talking and, talking about my emotions, but sometimes I get stuck in that planning stage. So how do I help myself really keep that flow through? And I've got beautiful techniques for anybody who is in each aspect of how you can keep that flow and keep moving through that thinking, planning, feeling, doing aspects of the practical life stuff.
Yes,
and
wonderful. Go ahead.
Sorry, if anyone's in Sydney too, I do have a tribe meeting this weekend at Naremburn Eat and Chill Cafe from 11:30 till 1.
Right. So you do have a tribe with Sacred You then?
Yes, a Sydney tribe at the moment. Yep. But might be transitioning to somebody else looking after it. But we've got the in-person on Saturday.
And I apologize, for some reason, my computer completely cut out. So I didn't hear about that, but thank you for telling us about that. That's lovely. Yes. And we have these wonderful tribes in Sacred You that I would highly, highly encourage anybody who's watching this, listening, to check out. It's a lovely community, over 30 tribes, with everything from what Bex is doing to learning about abundance and spirituality, becoming your own best friend. There's even one that I love that is just to get together for an hour or so. You can be online or not, and that's just to do crafts and hang out and just be social. So very quickly, a little bit about me, Heidi Henyon. For this particular thing, I'm emphasizing my somatic practicing, which is really using the body and the movement and looking at the body and how the body is functioning and working and moving to really release trauma. And that's what I specialize in, is particularly with women who have had severe trauma in their life. And how do you become your own best friend and get out of the yak, yak, yak and make friends with all those voices in our head? And I have over 40 years of experience in all kinds of different things. So I don't really do my bio. If you want my bio, you can go to my website. That's HeidiHenyon.com. And there's the fun bio. And then there's, of course, the formal bio that lists all the stuff that some people are interested in. And what I'm offering is for anybody to have a free half-hour to an hour call where we look at and we dive into the practice of continuum movement, which is that practice of using breath and sound and natural inquiry to find out and feel, what does my body need? How to really start a very wonderful and kind dialogue with yourself and your body, so your body can inform you as to what it needs, because it takes care of us in this life. Without this body, we wouldn't have this life. So we really, it's lovely when we can learn to listen to our body, because the other thing is our body will never lie to us. Our mind will on a regular basis. But the body never lies when we learn to tap into the body. So, so what I'd like to do is everybody is to just leave on giving just 1 or 2 words of inspiration that might be helpful to our audience. And so, for example, I will start, and that is, you're always your best friend. Just love yourself. Soulara, what would you say? Just a quick one-liner to just help inspire our audience.
Sure. You can always change your reality. The answers are inside of yourself.
Nice. Thank you so much. How about you, Adele?
I'll be very simple. Just enjoy life to the fullest.
I love it. That's fabulous. And Beck?
Always look to nature to see the beauty within you.
Nice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this lovely, lovely panel. I have enjoyed so much what everybody had to say and the conversation, and we could go on, I'm sure, for another couple hours. However, our time is up. So thank you so much for joining us for Inspire, Innovate, Ignite, Conversations That Count. And Sophia, who's just joined us, will tell you how you can get involved with this wonderful community. I've been involved with it for over a year now. I've met amazing people all over the world. I live in the United States, and I can't wait to get down to Australia to visit all the beautiful people that I've met down there, and the tribes are fun, and it's just fabulous. And I know that you can try out this whole system for like $1 Australian, which, by the way, in the US, that's not even a cup of coffee. It's amazing. So Sophia, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Heidi, and you're absolutely beautiful. And what a wonderful panel. I've been sitting here in the background putting everyone's links in, and it is amazing. I love everyone's tips and techniques on remaining fluid. Like, we really, really do. Our bodies, as you're saying, are so much made out of water, and it helps us to keep in balance and everything. And I love it. And I love how you ended it off. Heidi, and we are looking forward to you coming down to Australia. Heidi, it's wonderful. Thank you. Before I finish, very, very quickly, tell us about being your own best friend. Very quickly.
So I do have my own tribe with in Sacred Jew. We've been on hold a little bit because I am becoming my own best friend. I've had some physical challenges because I got too involved in the outside world and stopped listening to my body. So I've been taking off a bit of time to do that. And becoming your own best friend is a place where we just have conversations around, how do you be kinder to yourself? How can you be gentle with yourself? How can you make friends with the voices in your head? And we do practices like truth diving, which is a really fun, I learned that from one of my mentors, it's a really fun process with another person when you're up against that resistance that, Adele was talking about, and you're trying to get through it and understanding, why am I so resistant to this thing that really isn't that scary? It's a quick process you can do with another person to literally get at the root of what that resistance is and clear it out. We do that, perception. So we do a lot of fun things like that. So that's my try.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. And I totally agree. And I'm looking forward to when you're restarting it, whenever that may be, because I really, we do have fun. And it's so true. If we can't be our own best friend, who can be?
Yes.
And we're the only person in this world that spends every single second with us. And it's a wonderful thing to be our own best friend. So thank you, Heidi. And I just want to honor you. And as you said, everyone who's watching, and we do have a few people watching us, so thank you very much for everyone who's watching. I'd like to give a big shout out, first of all, to Trina, who's also in the background doing the techie stuff, and also Maymuna. But for everyone who is watching us, join us just for $1 Australian. And then for that, you get 2 weeks to come and join Heidi for being your own best friend, and all of our other tribes. We've got over 30 tribes. That's $1 Australian. And then after that, it's just $15 Australian a month. Click on the links. There's more details, and come and join us for Harmony Fest. And I know, Bex, you got to go. Thank you ever so much. And Harmony Fest is coming up in just 4 weeks' time. Click on sacredyou.love, visit our website, and check out Harmony Fest. We've got so much. We've got readers and panel discussions and all sorts of things happening. Very exciting. And another panel discussion and masterclasses. Thank you ever so much, and we'll see you in 2 days' time.